Now, moving on, former counter-terrorism chief Neil Basu is likely to be part of the new Labour government's plans to take control of the small boats crossing crisis. Now, reports suggest he's the leading candidate to head Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's new Border Security Command, saying aimed at smashing people smuggling gangs at the heart of illegal crossings. Well, joining me now is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Robert Bates. Robert, welcome to the show. So, one of the biggest jobs in Parliament is the Home Secretary's job, a massive in tray, and now Neil Basu has been placed in command, most likely. Do we know anything about him and what this might mean?
You're absolutely right. It's one of the biggest issues facing the country, and it's one of the things that really turned voters against the Conservative Party at the tail end of the last Parliament was the small boats crisis. What we're already seeing, though, is the Labour Party seem to be outsourcing the decision-making around this. They seem to be passing the buck. They're appointing a new star, as you say. Neil Basu is looking set to come in, and if you have a glance at his CV, he's been around the block for quite a while in various roles with the police and counter-terrorism. He headed up the UK's counter-terrorism efforts at the end of the 2019 period. But, I mean, unfortunately, I hate to have to break to the viewers, he seems to be another kind of what you'd expect from a Labour appointment. He's an individual obsessed with the kind of the woke agenda. He's an individual who thinks that the key priorities facing the police force are inclusion and diversity and equality. He's really stuck the knife into Suella Braverman previously when she was talking about trying to address the boat crisis. She was talking about wanting to get planes taking off to Orlando and that being her dream. Apparently, such language is horrific, according to Basu. So, I think, unfortunately, his appointment or his soon-to-be appointment indicates the tone shift that we're going to see on the small boats crisis. At least the Conservative Party had some recognition that they needed to be doing something to deter those from making the crossing. I can imagine that under Basu, the priority will be well and truly shifting onto the gangs and this kind of nebulous concept of clamping down upon them with little effort actually to thwart the huge demand that there currently is in northern France to make those crossings.
So Neil Basu, we know he was the national command when the threat from Islamic State was at its highest. He has a firm CV in that front. Also, when the terror attacks, including the Manchester Arena bombing, happened, he was the national command. But he's also been involved with Prevent. And Prevent, of course, has been very heavily criticised by being focused on the far right, when a lot of people point out quite credibly and reasonably and statistically the real threat has been from Islamic terror. And there's a huge issue, as we know, Robert Bates, about the people coming in on small boats. We have no idea who they are.
It's a huge national security concern. You're absolutely right. But just to refer to Basu's track record on this issue, as you say, he's been straining every sinew to try and force the narrative away from the very blatant Islamist terrorism that we all know and we all see and we're all well aware of, and instead trying to amplify this notion of a far-right threat that, let's be clear, there are people in this country that obviously hold unsavoury views, and a smaller section of them are perhaps akin to act upon them. But the idea that somehow the right-wing extremist threat is anyway comparable to Islamist terrorism is for the birds. But yeah, he's been well and truly resistant of this idea that Islamist terrorism should be put at the heart of any counter-terrorism measures. He was pushing back even against the use of the term a few years ago, saying that we need to have a conversation about how we refer to these kind of attacks, and instead proposing that we refer to them as faith-based terrorism as well. So he's a chap that's very much focused with image. He's very much focused with kind of appealing to this kind of bleeding heart sentimentality that we've seen in a lot of institutions over the last few years, and that arguably under the Labour Party are going to be put on steroids. So I think he's a perfect appointment for a Labour government, but sadly for the country, I can't see that him doing much to actually clamp down on the huge national security threat that is occurring on the south coast.
OK, he's certainly got his work cut out for him, Robert Bates. 300 illegal immigrants arrived on 6 boats today, on top of about 80 already yesterday. So no signs of those boats stopping any time soon. Robert Bates, thanks for joining us, the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you very much for your time.